The Silent Hill series is, without a doubt, one of the most terrifying experiences to ever grace a game console. No matter who you ask, you'd be hard-pressed to find a gamer who doesn't hold at least one of the games in the series in the highest regard. But the question is why? Well, in my opinion, there is one key reason for this universal reverence. Thanks to the budget and technological limitations that the developers were working under, a large-scale Hollywood-style Fright Fest was out of the picture, so Team Silent instead decided to focus on a much more psychologically driven horror experience. Their games were meant to get under your skin and inside your head, and I think this is why so many look back fondly on their favorite entry. While the gameplay was working over your fear centers with its unique approach to horror, its seemingly cryptic and disjointed storyline was hard at work making you feel confused and uneasy. While this horror-based double team was a winning duo for a time, it unfortunately led to mass confusion among those who hadn't beaten all three games in the series or might not have read into every memo and cutscene. This misinformation epidemic has reached far and wide, and with the internet exploding in popularity around the same time as the series itself, fans the world over have spread theories and interpretations that often run contrary to Team Silent's tight and well-crafted narrative. So in honor of this month of fear and terror, I'm going to clear up what I think are the top 3 misconceptions that fans have developed over one of the best horror franchises ever conceived. Now, since this is a touchy subject for some, I want to assure you that everything that follows will be taken directly from information found in the games themselves or from the mouths of the team that crafted them. And since Part 3 was the last game to feature a fully formed Team Silent, unfortunately everything from The Room to Downpour will be considered non-canon. And now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's dive right into Silent Hill's top 3 misconceptions. I understand some of you guys may not have played these masterpieces yet, so I'm going to keep this list relatively spoiler-free. That being said, I will have to give specific information about some of the more commonly known elements of the story, so those of you who have never experienced a Silent Hill game may want to pay attention to the on-screen cues that'll let you skip past any of these parts. And as a favor to me, I want to ask that the rest of you keep these future Silent Hill fans in mind when discussing things in the comments section. Between the 3 main entries in the Silent Hill series, one of the many things that remains common is a shift into what the game likes to call the Other World. Upon entering the Other World, players will find a hellish mirror image of the area they've been exploring. Where walls and floors once stood, there's now metal plating and chain links. Some rooms seem to be wrapped in human skin, and if it wasn't obvious by now, any illusion of safety that may have been left before has now flown out the window. In each game, this other world is sprung into existence in different ways, but the force behind it is rarely outright explained through dialogue, and when it is, it's often misleading information. This is to make these horrifying environment changes as confusing and alienating to us as it is to the characters we're controlling, and many Silent Hill fans have taken it upon themselves to theorize that these changes are due to the town of Silent Hill existing in several different dimensions, and as players we shift into these dimensions at random intervals. While I will admit this seems like a plausible scenario at first, further inspection into the history of Silent Hill proves that this is indeed not the case. But before we go forward, we're going to need a refresher course on this foggy little town and the area around it. Silent Hill, as it's described in the game, is located in Maine, overlooking Toluca Lake. Well before the town's creation, the area was noted by Native American tribes as having a strong spiritual power. After its formation, Silent Hill went through an economic and social roller coaster, going from an outbreak of a deadly disease to a prison colony to a thriving coal industry to a tourist hotspot. When the tourism industry dried up, so did the town, with the exception of a secretive demon-worshipping cult who discovered the strong spiritual power of the area, and then used it in an attempt to bring their god into existence. After this, the town's power was tainted, and it's at this point the events of the first game take place. Most fans of multiple dimension theory think that this is the only way to explain the hellish demons that walk the streets and the unreal events that take place here. In the process, they have also created a fairly complicated map of several different dimensions and reasons as to why certain events must be taking place in specific dimensions. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a fan of looking into a game and deriving your own meaning from it, but the creators of the game have already provided us with an answer here. Throughout the game, the otherworld is described as a nightmare, and this is actually pretty fitting, as the spiritual power of Silent Hill takes the negative thoughts of the main characters and projects them onto the real world. This is something that can be proven through the monsters in each game. In the first game, the nightmares related to Alessa, and all of the monsters are drawn from her fears and pains derived from her demonic pregnancy and physical state. Parts 2 and 3 follow suit with monsters and environments that are tailor-made for each respective protagonist. In Silent Hill 2, the town gets more bleak and unstable as James descends into it, representing a physical form of him exploring deeper into his own mind and emotions. Part 3 has the otherworld forming around Heather when she isn't even in Silent Hill, and this is due to a physical condition that I don't want to spoil here, but suffice it to say, her transitions include immense physical pain and produces monsters that relate to someone else altogether. Which, if you think about it, in and of itself breaks the entire argument of multiple dimension theory, as the nightmare manifests around her even in Portland. This idea that these are actually just different dimensions means that each person who visits Silent Hill is sent to a personal dimension that just happens to be filled with monsters that relates to their own inner nightmare. Now, this is a very complicated theory that relies mostly on speculation, when a much simpler answer has already been given in the games themselves. More proof can be found in the Book of Lost Memories, where it says the town is centered around Toluca Lake, from which a thick fog perpetually enshrouds the area and makes vague the reality and dreams of those who visit the town. This is pretty cut and dry. Silent Hill doesn't act as some kind of interdimensional bus depot. Instead, it takes a person's inner fears and negative thoughts and gives them life. While alternate dimension theory is admittedly pretty interesting, it's essentially a fun what-if scenario dreamt up by fans who don't fully understand the dark and intriguing world of Silent Hill. Okay, so he may not have been named in the game proper, but we all know his nickname. Pyramid Head has taken up a position of unofficial mascot of the Silent Hill series, a fact that becomes even clearer when merely typing the word Silent Hill into Google Images. It seems like the fan base as a whole have grabbed onto this red pyramid thing, and he's ripped his way right into our hearts, which is gonna make this a particularly unpopular statement even in the context of this list. Okay, here we go. Pyramid Head both cannot and should not exist outside of the events of Silent Hill 2. I know it stings at first, but the truth often does. To figure this one out, we're gonna have to go back to the beginning of Silent Hill 2, and those of you who haven't played it yet will definitely want to click this annotation here to skip past any spoilers. In Silent Hill 2, we play as James Sunderland, a man who's returned to Silent Hill to answer a letter from his dead wife, Mary. Now, in reality, we know that James has come to work through his guilt, having been involved in her death. But as we know from the game, this isn't the first time that James has been to Silent Hill. It seems sometime before Mary's demise, the couple vacationed in this foggy little town, and James saw a picture of an executioner from Silent Hill's past as a prison colony, and this is the defining moment that gave Pyramid Head his body. Throughout the game, James is stalked by the Pyramid Head, and at every turn he's either physically assaulting James or killing Mary's mirror image, Maria. The metaphor is pretty clear here. Pyramid Head is a real-life manifestation of James's guilt for having murdered his wife. Symbolically, Pyramid Head serves as a giant mirror being held in front of James, forcing him to not only face the monster he sees himself as, but also puts him through the hell that he thinks he deserves. Now, the disconnect happens when fans say the Pyramid Head is just a type of monster that can be found in Silent Hill, no matter who's present. The first glaring issue with this is the fact that all monsters in Silent Hill are taken from the minds of whoever is unlucky enough to be stuck there. In other words, there are no monsters native to Silent Hill. Until a person enters the town and is acted upon by its spiritual power, Silent Hill is empty. This can be observed by the beginnings of parts 1 and 3, as James and Harry are both able to explore the town without incident until these monsters suddenly appear, seemingly out of nowhere. The second and more obvious issue is that this theory denies the fact that he is manifested from James, a point that's driven home pretty hard by the events of the game itself. Using another of James's manifestations, Maria further proves the Pyramid Head comes specifically from his mind. Maria is the mirror image of James's late wife, but acts nothing like her because she takes on traits that James may have desired for her. Maria serves two purposes. First, she becomes a way for James to see some semblance of his wife, who he dearly misses. Second, she's an example to be used by the Pyramid Head to further punish our protagonist. Throughout the game, James is forced to watch her die several times, as this is what he thinks he deserves. Anyone saying that Pyramid Head is simply a part of Silent Hill has to come to accept that Maria must be also. If Pyramid Head can visit people in other media, why doesn't Maria? Listen, I know you guys love him. I mean, I do too, but the writing is on the wall, both figuratively and literally. Little Silent Hill humor there. Look, even though Hiroyuki Owaku describes Pyramid Head as something that is in the depths of James's unconsciousness that is trying to force him to remember his crime, I know that there will be those of you who still believe Pyramid Head is some kind of agent of Silent Hill's Department of Personal Torture. So let's go only on the events of the game. In the end of Silent Hill 2, after a fight with James, the remaining two Pyramid Heads both commit suicide, representing James coming to grips with his actions and not needing to be punished anymore. And there you have it. The most obvious case for Pyramid Head's exclusion from future games is the simple fact that he's dead. Listen, no one's telling you that liking Pyramid Head is some kind of crime. There's nothing wrong with that. The real problem occurs when new developers squat down and promptly take a shit all over 3 games worth of thoughtful and well-written character design. While I can't argue with the coolness of seeing him skin a person alive, the fact of the matter is Pyramid Head was born and died in the head of James Sunderland, and that's where he should stay. Now let's see that one more time.
Oh God, no.
And now we come to the most prevalent misconception plaguing this community. A misconception that is at the root of every fan theory and alternate explanation that can be found. This is the idea that Silent Hill's seemingly vague storyline is open to interpretation. It seems like Silent Hill fans the world over are under the impression that their lack of understanding in regards to Silent Hill's narrative is actually an act of foresight on the part of Team Silent. The basis of this belief is that Silent Hill, unlike most games of its kind, refuses to expose its plot outright through dialogue. In each of the 3 titles in the core series, only the most basic elements of the plot are kept above the surface. For example, a casual, bare-bones playthrough of Silent Hill 3 might lead a person to believe that it was a story about Heather getting revenge on a cult that has targeted her for some reason, while a seasoned vet will look into every file found and pick up on all the subtext conveyed during conversations. Scenes like this might be taken at face value when viewed by a fan who knows little of the lore surrounding these games, but a hardcore fan will know that Vincent isn't insinuating that these monsters that Heather have been killing are indeed people. Instead, his connections to the cult cause him to think of them as angels. Similar scenes can be found in all 3 games, and many people take this as an invitation to think of their own explanations, but in reality it's quite the opposite. The Silent Hill series keeps its main story elements out of reach in an attempt to get fans to dig deeper into the game's lore. The idea was to pique a player's curiosity with the tip of the iceberg, and that this would lead them to piece together what is a very rewarding puzzle. That being said, Team Silent did omit small details from their story on purpose. For example, what the demon cult worships and exactly when the games take place. As far as the timeline goes, fans have theorized several possible dates based on small hints in the game and even the make and model of Harry Mason's Jeep. Small elements like these are fair game as the developers knowingly left them out, but to theorize about where Pyramid Head came from or what dimension the games take place in is to ignore the fact that these elements have already been explained in pretty intricate detail. Now, this may be a depressing fact for some of you super fans, but the book on Silent Hill has been closed. The story has already been written, and believe me, it is very specific and detail-oriented. It's not filled with holes or purposely open-minded as some fans would have you believe. Now, obviously, there's nothing wrong with coming to your own conclusions, but make sure these conclusions don't already exist in the game. Now, I'm gonna have to level with you. This is gonna require some work. A full understanding of this tale demands multiple playthroughs and a keen eye for secrets, but the story is there, and it's glorious. So in the end, instead of thinking up your own answers, take that time and effort and apply it to discovering the rich and darkly satisfying answers that have already been provided. But the last thing I want is for you guys to take my word for it. I want you to go out there and re-experience these classic horror titles and discover 100% of this twisted tale. I guarantee you'll be happy that you did. Hey guys, thanks for giving me a platform to talk about one of my favorite game series on. Even though I just spent a large portion of my time tearing down your hopes and dreams, I do have to say I appreciate every single one of you. And speaking of appreciation, this video was part of a Halloween series that all my friends in Multitapped are involved in, so if you're in the mood for some quality content, check out some of their videos by clicking on them here. And if you're feeling that Halloween vibe, why not click the subscribe button? I'm not quite sure how those two are related, so I recommend you don't think about it.